Passiamo al prossimo incontro, abbiamo quindi un altro keynote speech, chiamo qui sul palco Muqadeh Erdönmez, member of the Executive Board, HDI Global C. And the title of his speech is Regulation, Risk, Opportunity and Insurers View, and he will dive into the transformative ESG landscape. Thank you, I leave you the floor.
Grazie mille. All right, we head off directly. We start? Yes. Okay. So first of all, a warm welcome from my side, and I'm really happy and honored to be with you for the next 20 minutes and see actually a lot of familiar faces. So I've been introduced already by my colleague. My name is Muqadeh Erdönmez. I'm executive board member for liability, cyber and motor at HDI, and I have the pleasure to talk about the topic of ESG. And Mr. Paris already elaborated a lot of the risks which are associated to the topic. And I'm really looking forward to also talk a little bit about the opportunities of the topic. Obviously, we see a lot of challenges when it comes to ESG. It's something new. And maybe I have to disappoint you. I don't have the perfect answer to the topic. But what I would really like to do is to talk to you a little bit how we see the challenges, where we see the implications for our clients, you, the risk managers, and there was one comment I really liked. Your job is to create sustainability for your organizations and be resilient. And one of the key topics which we are looking now as an ESG, from an ESG perspective, is really that resilience topic. So please let me outline in the first instance what we actually, when we look at the ESG topic, how do we structure it? Why is it so important? And for us, clearly, it has two significant dimensions. One is the legal changes. So there are a lot of regulatory changes which currently happened with regard to the topic of ESG, which are actually influencing the way we do business. And at the same time, we see a lot of transformational risks. Some of them have been already touched upon multiple times, the E, right? We see a lot of climate change, environmental changes. We see a lot more natural hazards coming our way. But also, like, on the long run, we see a change in the climate. So what is that actually creating as a risk from one of us, from one side on the topic of our facilities and everything, but on the other side, we see also a lot of risks coming through in the E and the S and the G side. So on the social and the governmental side. It has been a lot been talked about the topic of governance and how the topic of governance is actually influencing us. And when we look at our organization, we have to clearly say the upcoming regulations clearly have an impact on the way we do business, how our clients do business, and how we actually report. So if you quickly want to give me the opportunity to talk about the three pillars, because we always speak, when we speak about the ESG topic, on the E, right? A lot of us experience that in our daily lives when we say, like, okay, we see the changing climate, right? We see more and more natural hazards. We see wildfires, we see heat waves, we see droughts, and we're all dealing with that from a very long period of time. But the challenge which we're really seeing is the increase in frequency. And how do we deal that from a property perspective? That is something which is really, really changing the way we look at it from insurance, but also from a reinsurance perspective. And also, if you look to a step beyond that, the topic of we need to ensure our environmental safety. Right? The entire topic of biodiversity, ensuring biodiversity, is something which is expected from us. And we've been talking about that a lot, and there is a lot of products already in the market where we deal with those kind of things. But what we actually never speak a lot about is the S and the G, particularly the S one. We have a lot of initiatives coming through on the S side when it comes to our workforce. We're hiring towards diversity, we're having a lot of inclusion. But there are also risks coming with it, particularly if you're acting as a global company. And you will see later on, the topic of supply chain management is really, really becoming a game changer. How can you ensure the S component, right? And then it has been spoken already about Nike and how they produce their footballs in Vietnam with child labor. That is a topic. But actually, you as a company will be responsible for your suppliers based on the regulation which is coming through. And all of these things are changing the landscape and the way we look at things. And the governance perspective, I mean, it has been also spoken about Parmalat, right? And there are a lot of other topics which come through. But the governance view of the regulator is increasing more and more. And associated to that are reporting duties and costs. So in a world which is getting more and more competitive, which is getting more and more complex, where we see more and more risks, our cost component is increasing. And we speak about Europe, right? So our competitive landscape is changing in comparison to the remainder of the world, being in the US, being in Asia, being in South America, where these regulations do not take place. And speaking about those regulations, the key thing the European Union tries to do is to strive the climate neutrality to 2050 by refocusing or redirecting investments. The plan is to have an industry transformation towards a climate neutral economy, which means that all of us have to transform. And it's not only like you as a client, but we also as servicing industries have to transform and think about how we can actually work together. Because as part of the ongoing regulations, the challenge which we're seeing is, and that is like 3 weeks ago, a client came up and said like, oh, you need to be ESG compliant, otherwise I cannot place my business with you. So there are clear regulations going on, defining how we do business, but also with whom we can do business. And that is also then now starting now, when we look at our entire value chain, to direct us in a way of rethinking the value chain under different dimensions. And also with regard to that, when you look at it, we clearly see that not only the governmental elements, but also the non-governmental elements put a lot of pressure on us. These are like real examples which are geared towards the Talanx Group when it comes to the ESG topic. So the regulator is pushing the regulatory environment, changing the way we have to do business, and putting significant financial fines on us if we don't do so. Our clients putting that on us as well. But at the same time, we also see NGOs. And this is really like, you see the building in the back, that's our headquarters in Hanover, and that's actually an advertising directly in front of our building, saying like, everyone is stepping out of oil and gas. What are you doing, Talanx? So there is really an initiative going on which is creating a public perception. On the left side, you see a scoring which has been provided to us last week by an NGO, saying like, oh, we're evaluating your sustainability approach, and your scoring is X, Y, and Z. How do you want to comment on that? And if not, we're just publishing it. And with this publishing also, we as an organization not only become into the spotlight of the NGOs, but of public opinion, right? Newspapers pick that up, our clients read this, our employees read it, right? And the question comes up, what are you going to do with it? So everything which we see with the ESG going on is driven by regulation as well as public opinions. And with this is also changing the landscape of our risks, right? We see the regulatory changes, which I remember at the beginning that was like the vertical axis. Now we go to the horizontal axis. If we stick to the regulatory environment, if we basically fulfill what we have to do, how is actually our core business doing, or your core business doing? And when we look at it, and I just took PFAS as an example for environmental damages, we clearly see that the way we approach environmental risks has changed in the last 10 years significantly, and that we see obviously more and more claims coming through on the environmental side. If you look historically back, environmental claims were very rare. We had like some, but not a lot. But when we speak about PFAS, this is at this point in time primarily environmental pollution. So when we look at it, it's about water and soil pollution through AFFF, firefighting forms, which have polluted the ground and the soil with PFAS. That's it. And we have one, not we, but there's one company which actually paid or is in a settlement process for these losses of $10 billion US. So the environmental component gets more and more important, and because there are a lot of governmental bodies, NGOs, and consumers who look for indemnification. They are really striving on the back on the ESG developments on compensation, not only for themselves, right, but also for the public. And with this, obviously, the way we do business, the way we deal or sell products becomes more challenging. If you look at PFAS, we speak of more than 10,000 different kinds of PFAS. At the end of the day, there are, like, at this point in time, only very few cases of PFAS which really result in a pollution. But when we look at the topic, almost in every product we have PFAS. We now speak only about the AFFF ones, so the firefighting foams. But if you're sitting in a car, the entire cockpit is made of PFAS. If you're looking at outdoor wear, the entire cover is out of PFAS. We have coatings. You have PFAS used in industrial production. So if we now move to a fact that we say, like, okay, PFAS is polluting the environment, and you have all of this PFAS being in industrial production, what is the consequence out of that? We cannot take it out. If we would today ban all PFAS, we would not be able to continue economic activities. Full stop. But on the other side, you see the ESG regulatory challenges. So from that point of view, we're currently in a stage where we see a lot of pressure coming through from the regulatory perspective, but economically, we're not transitioned yet. We don't have the production facilities, processes, raw materials to compensate for some of the materials which cause pollution. CO2 is an example for that. We're all working very hard on CO2 compensation, but it's simply not possible from one day to another. So that means that these environmental topics are really pushing the transformation in a very fast way. I mean, we speak about 27 years until 2050 to be climate neutral, but things are happening faster and faster. Regulation is getting more and more tight. And that is only on the environmental side. As I said, the supply chain I already mentioned. We will be responsible, you will be responsible for managing your supply chains. You need to ensure that the supplier of your supplier of your supplier is actually following European ESG laws. That's going to be difficult. How can you actually start tracking that, monitoring that? That's a huge effort, but regulatory-wise, we will be forced to do it. And at the same time, if you look, for instance, at the lower right corner, we have that entire thrive for being compliant with diversity and inclusion. And I just gave the lower one as an example. I don't know how many of you have been aware of the campaign of Bud Light in the US with a transgender person. And the result of this advertising was that Bud Light lost 25% of their annual revenue. We're talking multi-billions within 4 weeks. Because their customer base actually was not agreeing with it. They were totally opposing the way Bud approached the topic. And on the one side, we're actually, and I'm not judging if this is right or wrong, we're actually saying, like, we want diversity and inclusion and everybody should be part of the society, which I fully sign up to. And on the other side, you have clients which have a certain kind of mindset. Not everywhere in the world we have the same preferences. And to some extent, the ESG topic is driving European companies towards a policy which might be not applicable in all parts of your customers. And we need to be aware of that. So having spoken about the risks, right? We speak about the regulatory changes, we speak about the risks changes and the different kind of approaches to it, social inflation. We also see a huge potential for us in Europe, right? And these are just two numbers, right? We speak about the change in global ESG assets within like 3 years from 35 billion to 50 billion. We see a huge increase in ETFs over the last 4 years. If you just look the period from 2006 to 2016, there is not a lot of change. But if you look from 2018 to 2022, it's exploding. So there is a lot of opportunity for us. And I believe if we manage the risks wisely, if we really bring our organizations into a place where we can have a sustainable and a resilient organizations in place, there's a huge opportunity out there for us, and particularly for you. Because when we look at it, we're now, and the Ukraine-Russian war is just one example, which is driving the energy transition. It's just accelerated. It actually started way earlier, but it accelerated the topic. And with this, we see a lot of opportunity, particularly in the European markets. One of the things which is challenging with regard to that is, and we had a conversation with one of the leading companies for manufacturing renewable energy operations. 95% of the raw materials which are necessary for the production of windmills and solar panels are under the control of China. 95%. So as much as we would like to drive the change, at this point in time, we're very much depending on China and the raw materials coming out of it. So there needs to be a very wise policy about how to deal with it and how we can actually exploit the opportunity which we're seeing. On the other side, we see like green technologies coming through, e-vehicles, battery systems and everything. And also there, in some other parts of the world, are really already focusing on these elements. But there is so much space and so much potential for innovation in it that we say, like, this is something which we can really benefit on. So as much as the regulations forces us to change from our traditional way of thinking, it enables us to take the opportunity which comes out of it. But at the same time, this means for us that we need to be innovative. We need to look for different ways. And we say, like, changing customer choices. This morning, we had a conversation about circular economies. The way clients buy, sell products is changing. Sustainability becomes more and more important. So what are new business models which you can actually use to make more margins out of your current product suites? So for that, we are really looking to support you in that transformation. That transformation is for us key, because also we are subject to the ESG regulations. And we just did put up some of the topics there, which are actually influencing the way we look at business. I mean, the investment topic is one thing, but at the same time, we will not be able to insure companies which are not ESG compliant. And not insuring companies which are not ESG compliant means that to a certain extent, we will not be able to support the innovation or the transformation. So it's really a catch-22. It's important that our clients really have a transformation path. And at the same time, that transformation path really needs to communicate. Because for us, that is the key. We are not walking away from the challenges ESG is providing. We are really willing to invest in the innovation and support our clients in the transition which is forced through ESG. In the first instance, obviously, we have to tighten our underwriting guideline with regard to the existing coal and gas. Right? As you've seen, we've been approached by NGOs saying, oh, why are you still insuring that? And our statement is, We are ensuring oil and gas companies or energy companies which have a transition path to green, which allows us to support that transition. We're not walking away. We're not saying, no, we're not doing it anymore, but we really want to support that transition because we're also a true believer that things cannot happen from one day to another. And our job is really to support that innovation. So at this point in time, when we look at the ESG topic, we look at from like, okay, how can we get from here to there? Because when you look to the governments, it's always easy, right? Well, they say like, we don't want this, but we want that. The question is, how do we get from here to there? Well, that's your problem, usually, they say. But actually, that's a little bit challenging because we're not in a world where we're autonomous, right? We're in a competitive landscape. We're in a global economy. Things depend on each other. We cannot just put up windmills without the raw material. The raw material is controlled by China. We don't have influence on how China is actually producing them. But we have to under ESG law. So and that transition is really something where we believe it takes time. But at the same time, we need to be very clear on that we need to have a plan for it because there is no other option. So when we look at it, we say like clearly it's not only fostering the green opportunities like on a product landscape, it's about also looking about new risk solutions, different kind of parametric solutions. How can we reduce the impact? So we first have to fight the cause, but you also have to reduce the impact. And that is also when we look, for instance, at climate adaptation services. For us, the clear point is when we look at it, there are huge opportunities out there, but there are also the risks out there. And that only works if we, in collaboration and in total transparency, work with each other. And that's the reason why we also say, like, it needs to be a partnership in transformation. Because we all, our clients, as well as we as an insurance company, are subject to ESG regulations. That's it, right? No way out. We see in a competitive landscape that is mainly a European topic. So we have to a certain extent a competitive disadvantage. But at the same time, that competitive disadvantage can be transformed in a competitive advantage if we focus on the innovation. But innovation always means risk, right? Opportunity and threat. You, as clients, should be concentrating on the opportunities, while we, as a company, should support you on the threats. And that is actually what we're really looking into that. And that should give you an idea about in which direction we want to go. As a company, for us, the focus is the transformation. The transformation of the critical industries, like oil and gas, but also the transformation of, I would say, the non-critical companies when looking for business opportunities and changing in business models. So when we look at ESG, the ESG topic is a regulatory topic which is driving transformation. And remember, we said the EU wants to transform the industry through those regulations. And obviously, you, as our clients, are faced with it. You know your business better than we do. We know the regulations, but what we can offer is you really the support in taking the risks. And with this, I'm basically also looking at the time I have to close. Any questions? No questions? Thank you very much.